The stagecoach rattled to a halt in a cloud of dust, bringing Katherine Graham's new life to its uncertain beginning. She clutched her small valise with trembling hands, wincing as the movement aggravated her tender ribs. The bruise around her eye had darkened to a deep purple, impossible to hide despite her efforts with powder and a carefully arranged bonnet. Katherine took a deep breath, ignoring the pain in her side, and stepped down from the coach into the blazing New Mexico sun. Santa Fe sprawled before her, a sprawling collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures that looked nothing like the Boston home she'd fled. The year was 1882, and Katherine had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to marry a man she'd never met, a rancher who had advertised for a bride in the matrimonial newspapers back east. She squinted against the sunlight, scanning the faces of those waiting by the stagecoach stop. A tall man in a dusty hat stepped forward, his expression shifting from expectation to concern as he noticed her face. "Miss Graham?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Katherine nodded, fighting the urge to turn away and hide her injury. "Yes, Mr. Keller, I presume." The man's eyes, a striking blue that reminded her of summer skies back home, studied her face. His jaw tightened as his gaze lingered on her black eye. "Adam Keller," he confirmed, removing his hat in a gesture of respect that surprised her. "What happened to you, Miss Graham?" Katherine's rehearsed explanation died on her lips under his direct gaze. "It's nothing," she said automatically. "A mishap during the journey." Adam Keller didn't respond immediately. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin and strong hands that spoke of hard work. When he finally spoke, his words were simple but delivered with quiet conviction. "That life is over now," he said, gesturing toward her injured face. "Whatever brought you here with those marks, it ends today." Katherine wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or frightened by his declaration. She'd escaped one controlling man only to place herself in the hands of another. Yet something in Adam Keller's expression held no malice, only a steady resolve that somehow made her feel safer than she had in months. "My wagon's this way," he said, reaching for her trunk. "Unless you'd prefer to rest at the hotel before heading to the ranch." "No," Katherine said quickly. She had barely enough money left for emergencies. "I'd like to see my new home." Adam nodded, hefting her trunk onto his shoulder with ease. "It's 15 miles outside town. Not much to look at, but the land's good. Got about 200 head of cattle and some decent grazing land." As they walked toward his wagon, Katherine noticed people staring not at her black eye, but at them as a pair. She supposed mail-order brides weren't uncommon in these parts, but she still felt exposed under their curious gazes. Adam helped her onto the wagon seat, his touch careful and impersonal as he made sure she was settled. When he climbed up beside her and took the reins, Katherine felt a strange mixture of terror and hope. She had no idea what kind of man Adam Keller truly was, but her options had run out back east. This was her last chance at a life free from fear. The wagon lurched forward, carrying her toward an unknown future with a stranger who had just promised her protection with 7 simple words. The road out of Santa Fe was rutted and rough, each jolt sending a spike of pain through Katherine's bruised ribs. She tried not to wince, but after a particularly hard bump, she couldn't suppress a small gasp. Adam glanced over, frowning slightly. "You're hurt elsewhere," he said. It wasn't a question. "Just some bruising," Katherine admitted, keeping her eyes fixed on the horizon. The landscape was unlike anything she'd seen before, vast stretches of scrubland punctuated by distant mesas and mountains. Despite her pain and uncertainty, she couldn't help but be awed by the wild beauty. "When we get to the ranch, Mrs. Perez can take a look at you," Adam said. "She's my housekeeper, Been with the ranch since my pa was alive." "You have a housekeeper?" Katherine asked, surprised. The correspondence had suggested a modest ranching operation, not one that could afford household staff. "She's more family than employee these days," Adam explained. "Her husband Miguel works the ranch with me and the other hands. They live in a small house on the property." Katherine nodded, relieved that there would be another woman present. The thought of being alone with this stranger miles from town had filled her with unacknowledged dread. "Mr. Keller," she began hesitantly, "I feel I should be honest with you. The injury to my face was not an accident." Adam's hands tightened slightly on the reins, but his expression remained calm. "I figured as much. My former fiancé," Katherine continued, the words coming more easily now that she'd started. "When I tried to break our engagement, he became violent. It wasn't the first time. I left Boston that night, using the money I'd saved from teaching to buy passage west." She paused. "I answered your advertisement because I needed to get far away." Adam was quiet for so long that Katherine began to worry she'd made a mistake in confessing. Finally, he spoke. "Appreciate the honesty, Miss Graham. Don't change anything as far as I'm concerned. You came here for a fresh start, and that's what you'll get." "What exactly are your expectations?" Katherine asked, needing to understand the terms of this arrangement. "Your letter was somewhat vague." Adam kept his eyes on the trail ahead. "I need a wife for practical reasons. Ranch needs a woman's touch, and I'm not getting any younger. I expect you'll keep house, help with the accounts. You mentioned you were educated, and in time, perhaps we'll have a family." He glanced at her briefly. "I don't expect anything from you that you're not willing to give, Miss Graham. We can have a proper courtship, even though things are a bit backward." His words were reassuring, but Katherine had learned that men's promises often dissolved when they didn't get what they wanted. Still, she had few options now. "I should warn you that I have limited experience with ranch life," she said. "I grew up in Boston. My father was a professor at the university. I've never even seen a cow up close before today." This elicited a small smile from Adam. "We've got plenty of those. You'll be seeing them up closer than you might like soon enough." As they traveled, Adam pointed out landmarks and explained the basics of ranching in the territory. Katherine found herself relaxing slightly as he spoke of water rights, grazing patterns, and the challenges of the past winter. He was clearly knowledgeable and serious about his work, and there was something comforting in his straightforward manner. "That's the north boundary of Keller Ranch," he said eventually, pointing to a distant ridge line. "My father claimed this land 20 years ago. Started with nothing but a tent and 10 head of cattle. Built it up to what it is today before his heart gave out 3 years back." "I'm sorry for your loss," Katherine said sincerely. "Been managing on my own since then," Adam continued. "But a ranch this size needs a future, needs stability." He glanced at her briefly. "That's why I wrote that advertisement." The wagon crested a small rise, and suddenly the ranch came into view. A modest but well-maintained house of wooden construction sat nestled against a backdrop of cottonwood trees. A barn and several outbuildings formed a small compound, with corrals and fencing extending outward. It wasn't grand, but there was something inviting about the way it sat against the landscape, as if it belonged there. "It's lovely," Katherine said, and meant it. Adam looked pleased but tried to hide it. "It's home," he said simply. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was middle-aged with graying black hair and a weathered face that broke into a smile as she spotted the wagon. "That's Elena Perez," Adam explained. "She's probably been cooking since dawn, knowing you were arriving today." The wagon pulled up in front of the house, and Adam set the brake before coming around to help Katherine down. His hands were strong and steady as they spanned her waist, lifting her effortlessly to the ground. The brief contact sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. "Señor Adam," Alina called, hurrying forward. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw Catherine's face, but she recovered quickly. "You must be Miss Graham. Welcome, welcome to Keller Ranch." "Thank you," Katherine replied, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion and the reality of her situation. She had arrived at what was supposed to be her new home, with people who were strangers in a land utterly foreign to her. "Alina, Miss Graham has had a difficult journey," Adam said quietly. "She could use some rest and perhaps some of your healing remedies." Alina nodded, immediately taking charge. "Come inside, Miss Graham. I have a room prepared for you and hot water for washing. You must be exhausted from your travels." As Alina led her toward the house, Katherine glanced back at Adam, who was already unloading her trunk from the wagon. He looked up, catching her eye, and gave her a small nod that somehow contained both reassurance and respect. Perhaps, Katherine thought as she stepped into her new home, she had not made such a terrible decision after all. The interior of the ranch house was a pleasant surprise. While not lavish, it was clean and well furnished, with solid wooden pieces that spoke of quality rather than ostentation. Alina led Katherine to a bedroom at the back of the house, where sunlight streamed through curtained windows onto a simple but comfortable-looking bed. "This will be your room, Miss Graham," Alina said, opening the window to let in fresh air. Until you and Señor Adam decide otherwise." Katherine appreciated the woman's tact. "It's lovely, Mrs. Perez, thank you." "Alina, please," the housekeeper corrected with a smile. "Now, sit here and let me look at that eye. I have some arnica salve that will help with the bruising." Too tired to protest, Katherine sat on the edge of the bed while Alina examined her injury with gentle, experienced hands. "Someone hit you very hard," Alina observed, her voice matter-of-fact rather than pitying, which Katherine appreciated. "Yes," she replied simply. "And your side?" "I noticed you holding it when you walked." Katherine hesitated before nodding. "My ribs are bruised, I think." "Let me see," Alina said firmly. With reluctance, Katherine allowed Alina to help her remove her traveling jacket and loosen her blouse enough to reveal the dark bruising along her rib cage. Alina clicked her tongue in disapproval. "Nothing broken, I think, but very bad bruising. I will make a poultice." She looked up, meeting Katherine's eyes directly. "Señor Adam is a good man. He would never do such things to a woman." "I don't know him well enough to judge," Katherine replied carefully. "Judge by actions, not words," Alina advised, helping Katherine redress. "Now rest. I will bring you some food later, and we can talk more when you have slept." Left alone, Katherine found herself too exhausted to think clearly. She removed her boots and outer clothing, slipped beneath the clean sheets, and was asleep almost instantly. She woke to the sound of soft knocking. Disoriented, Katherine sat up quickly, wincing at the pain in her side. The light had changed. Several hours had passed. "Miss Graham." Adam's voice came through the door. "Alina's prepared some dinner if you're feeling up to joining us." Katherine smoothed her hair back and straightened her rumpled blouse. "Yes, thank you. I'll be out shortly." She found a pitcher of water and a basin on the dresser and quickly freshened up, doing her best to make herself presentable. Her reflection in the small mirror showed the bruise around her eye had deepened to a worrying purple, but there was nothing to be done about it now. When she emerged into the main room, she found Adam and Alina at a simple but sturdy dining table. A third man, whom she presumed to be Miguel Perez, stood as she entered. "Miss Graham," Adam said, also rising. "This is Miguel Perez, Alina's husband and my foreman." Miguel, a stocky man with kind eyes and a weathered face, nodded respectfully. Welcome to Keller Ranch, Senorita. We are happy to have you here. Thank you, Katherine replied, taking the seat Adam pulled out for her. The meal was simple but delicious, a hearty stew, fresh bread, and vegetables that Alina explained came from their kitchen garden. Adam ate quickly but neatly, a man accustomed to seeing food as fuel rather than pleasure. Still, he waited until Katherine had taken her first few bites before speaking. "Tomorrow I can show you around the property if you're feeling up to it," he offered. "Give you a better idea of the place." "I'd like that," Katherine said, surprised to find she meant it. After months of uncertainty and fear, there was something appealing about the straightforward nature of ranch life. "Miguel and I will be moving cattle to the north pasture in the morning, but we should be back by midday," Adam continued. The conversation flowed more easily than Katherine had expected. Adam spoke of ranch matters, Alina asked polite questions about Katherine's journey west, and Miguel occasionally added comments about the cattle or the weather. It was ordinary, domestic, and somehow comforting in its simplicity. After dinner, Adam excused himself to check on the livestock, and Alina shooed Katherine back to her room despite her offers to help with the dishes. "First night in a new place, you should rest," Alina insisted. "Tomorrow is soon enough to learn the workings of this house." Back in her room, Katherine unpacked her few belongings, arranging them carefully in the dresser drawers and on the small vanity. Her teaching credentials, carefully preserved in their protective case, she placed in the top drawer alongside her mother's cameo brooch and the few letters from her sister in Philadelphia. These small tokens of her former life seemed oddly out of place in this frontier setting. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Yes," she called. Adam's voice came through the door. "Just wanted to check if you need anything before I turn in for the night." Katherine opened the door, keeping it partially closed as a barrier between them. "I'm fine, thank you." Adam nodded, his hat in his hands. In the lamplight, she noticed how the sun had left its mark on his face, lines around his eyes from squinting against the brightness. His skin tanned to a deep bronze except for a pale strip across his forehead where his hat normally sat. He was handsome in a rugged, unpolished way. "Alina gave you her salves for your injuries?" he asked. "Yes," Katherine confirmed. "She was very kind." Adam shifted slightly, clearly uncomfortable with personal conversation but determined to press on. "Miss Graham, I want you to know that I understand this situation is unusual. We're strangers to each other, yet here you are, expected to make a life with me." He met her eyes directly. "I don't take that lightly. You'll have time to decide if this arrangement suits you." Katherine was surprised by his consideration. "What if it doesn't suit me?" "Then I'd see you safely situated elsewhere," he replied without hesitation. "I'm not in the business of keeping anyone against their will." The simple statement, delivered with quiet conviction, eased something in Katherine's chest that had been tight since she'd boarded the train in Boston. "Thank you, Mr. Keller." "Adam," he corrected gently. "If we're to be married, you might as well use my given name." "Then you must call me Katherine," she replied, testing the intimacy of the exchange. He nodded, a small smile touching the corners of his mouth. "Katherine," the way he said it, careful and measured, as if tasting the syllables, sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Good night, Adam." "Good night, Katherine. Sleep well." As she closed the door and prepared for bed, Katherine found herself pondering the strange twist her life had taken. A month ago, she had been engaged to Harold Winthrop, son of one of Boston's most prominent families, a man whose charming public persona masked a frightening temper. Now she was in the New Mexico territory, preparing to marry a cattle rancher she'd known for less than a day. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, she realized that for the first time in months, She wasn't afraid. Katherine woke to the sounds of activity horses nickering, men's voices calling to each other, the clang of metal tools. For a moment, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, she felt a surge of panic before remembering where she was. The Keller Ranch, her new home, or at least what might become her home if she decided to stay. She dressed quickly, choosing her sturdiest skirt and a simple shirtwaist. Her wardrobe, designed for teaching in Boston, was woefully unsuited to ranch life, but she'd make do until she could obtain more practical clothing. In the kitchen, Alina was kneading bread dough, her strong hands working the mass with practiced efficiency. She looked up as Katherine entered, smiling warmly. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected," Katherine admitted, moving to the stove where a pot of coffee simmered. "May I?" "Of course. This is to be your house soon. Help yourself." Katherine poured a cup, savoring the rich aroma. Through the window, she could see Adam and several other men on horseback, herding a small group of cattle away from the ranch buildings. "The men have been up for hours," Alina commented, following her gaze. Senor Adam was even up before dawn, checking on that pregnant heifer. "Is that normal?" Katherine asked, watching as Adam guided his horse with subtle movements, his posture relaxed yet alert. "For him, yes. He works harder than any man I know." "Too hard sometimes," Alina said, setting the bread dough aside to rise. "Sit. I'll make you some breakfast." Despite Katherine's protests, Alina insisted on serving her eggs, bacon, and freshly baked biscuits. As she ate, Alina moved about the kitchen, explaining the daily routines of the ranch when meals were typically served, which day was designated for laundry, how the pantry was organized. "Senor Adam said you were a teacher," Alina asked as she wiped down the countertop. "Yes, at a girls' school in Boston," Katherine confirmed. "Then you are educated. Good. The ranch books need a woman's careful eye. Men are careless with such things." Alina's tone was fond rather than critical. "My Miguel can barely write his name, though he's the smartest man I know about cattle and horses." "Has Adam Mr. Keller always lived here?" Katherine asked, curious about the man she had agreed to marry. "Since he was a boy." His father, Benjamin Keller, came west after the war, the one between the states. His mother died when Adam was just 10. Influenza. Alina crossed herself quickly. Benjamin raised him alone after that, taught him everything about ranching. When Benjamin died 3 years ago, Adam took over completely. "Does he have any other family?" Alina shook her head. "No one close. A cousin somewhere in California, I think, but they do not correspond." She paused in her work, looking at Katherine directly. "He is a good man, Miss Katherine. Honest, fair with his workers. He does not drink to excess or gamble away his money like some men around here." "Why hasn't he married before now?" Katherine asked, the question that had been nagging at her since she'd first responded to his advertisement. "There are few suitable women in these parts," Alina replied diplomatically. "And Adam, he is not a man who finds it easy to court a woman. He is more comfortable with cattle than with dancing and sweet words." She smiled. "But a wife who values reliability over romance might find him a very good husband indeed." Katherine considered this as she finished her breakfast. Romance had proven dangerous in her experience. Harold's initial charming pursuit had masked his true nature until it was almost too late. Perhaps Alina was right, reliability might be worth more than romantic gestures. After breakfast, Alina showed Katherine around the house, a tour that didn't take long, as the ranch house was modest but functional. There was the main living area with its stone fireplace, the kitchen with its large cast iron stove, a small study where Adam kept the ranch accounts, and 3 bedrooms. The main bedroom, Adam's, Catherine only glimpsed through a partially open door a Spartan space with a large bed, a dresser, and few personal touches. "He said he would move his things to the smaller room when you are married," Alina explained, "if you prefer your own space at first." The consideration behind this offer surprised Catherine. Harold would never have contemplated such an arrangement. By midday, as promised, Adam returned to the ranch house. Catherine watched from the porch as he dismounted, his movements fluid and practiced. He spoke briefly with the other cowboys before heading toward the house, removing his hat as he approached. "Good afternoon," he greeted, wiping sweat from his brow with a bandana. Up close, she could see the dust coating his clothes and skin, evidence of the morning's work. "Alina taking good care of you. She's been very kind," Catherine replied. "How was your morning?" "Productive. Got the pregnant heifers moved to the north pasture where the grazing's better." Adam glanced at her bruised face, his expression softening slightly. "How's the eye today?" "Better, I think," Catherine said, touching the tender skin gingerly. "Alina's salve seems to be helping." Adam nodded, satisfied. "Good. I thought I might show you around the property this afternoon if you're feeling up to it. Best to know the land you're living on." The offer sounded appealing after a morning spent indoors. "I'd like that." "I'll get cleaned up and have Miguel saddle a gentle mare for you," Adam said. "Meet you back here in half an hour." Catherine hesitated. "I should warn you that I've never ridden a horse before." This admission clearly surprised him. "Never. We traveled by carriage in Boston," she explained, feeling suddenly inadequate. "Horses were for transportation, not recreation, at least in my circles." Instead of the derision she half expected, Adam simply nodded thoughtfully. "We can take the wagon then, though it won't get us to all the places worth seeing." "No, I'd like to learn to ride," Catherine said firmly. If she was going to live here, she needed to adapt to the ways of the territory. "If you're willing to teach me." A small smile touched Adam's lips. "I can do that. We'll start slow." True to his word, Adam returned in clean clothes, his hair still damp from washing. He led Catherine to the barn where Miguel held the reins of two horses, a large chestnut gelding that Adam introduced as Rusty, and a smaller dun-colored mare called Mariposa. "She's gentle as they come," Adam assured her, stroking the mare's neck. "Perfect for a beginner." The next half hour was devoted to a basic riding lesson in the corral beside the barn. Adam was a patient teacher, explaining how to mount with his help, how to hold the reins and the basic commands to start, stop, and turn the horse. Catherine was nervous at first, but Mariposa was indeed gentle, responding to even her tentative commands. "You've got a natural seat," Adam commented after she'd successfully guided the mare in a complete circuit of the corral. "Some people fight against the horse's movements, but you're moving with her already." The unexpected praise warmed her, and Catherine found herself smiling despite the ache in her side from the new activity. When Adam was satisfied with her progress, they set out at a walk across the ranch property. The experience was unlike anything Catherine had known, the gentle sway of the horse beneath her, the vast expanse of sky overhead, and the seemingly endless landscape stretching in all directions. Adam pointed out landmarks as they rode, a creek that provided water for the cattle, the boundaries of his grazing lands, distant mountains with names she tried to commit to memory. He explained the seasonal cycles of ranching, the calving in spring, the summer grazing, the fall roundup, and the challenging winters. "It's a good life," he said as they paused on a ridge overlooking a valley where cattle grazed. "Hard work, but satisfying. You see what you've built with your own hands." "It's beautiful," Catherine said sincerely, taking in the panoramic view. "Different from anything I've known, but beautiful in its own way." Adam glanced at her, a question in his eyes. Do you think you could be content here, Katherine? It's a far cry from Boston. The direct question deserved an honest answer. I don't know, she admitted, but I'm willing to try. Boston holds nothing for me now. Adam nodded, accepting her honesty without pressing for details she wasn't ready to share. Fair enough, that's all I can ask. As they continued their tour, Katherine found herself studying Adam when he wasn't looking. There was something compelling about his quiet confidence, the way he sat easily in the saddle as if he and the horse were one entity. He spoke knowledgeably about the land but without boasting, simply stating facts as he understood them. When they returned to the ranch house in the late afternoon, Katherine was sore but exhilarated. Adam helped her dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. For a brief moment, they stood close together, and Katherine found herself noticing the fine lines around his eyes, the slight curl to his hair where it had dried in the sun. "Thank you for showing me the ranch," she said, taking a small step back. "My pleasure," he replied, his hands dropping back to his sides. "You did well for your first ride." That evening, dinner was a livelier affair with two ranch hands joining them, brothers named Tom and Jack Wilson, who'd worked for the Kellers since Adam was a boy. They were polite but curious about Katherine, asking careful questions about her journey and her impressions of the territory so far. Later, as the household settled for the night, Katherine found Adam on the porch, smoking a cigarette and gazing at the star-filled sky. "May I join you?" she asked. Adam immediately stood, gesturing to the chair beside his. "Of course." They sat in companionable silence for a few moments before Katherine spoke. "I've been thinking about our arrangement, Adam." He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "And I think we should proceed," she said, having come to the decision during their ride that afternoon. "With the marriage, I mean." Adam studied her face, his gaze serious. "Are you certain? There's no rush." "I came here to start a new life," Katherine replied. "Delaying won't change that intention, and I appreciate your consideration in all of this. You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. Katherine considered the question. "Someone older, perhaps, more demanding. Less willing to allow me time to adjust." Adam tapped his cigarette, watching the ash fall. "Marriage is a partnership, especially out here. It doesn't work if one person is forcing the other." He paused. "The man who gave you that black eye, was he your husband?" "No," Katherine replied, looking away. "My fiancé, former fiancé." "What was his name?" The question surprised her. "Harold Winthrop." "Why do you ask?" Adam shrugged slightly. "Just wanted to know the name of the man I'd beat senseless if he ever showed his face around here." The matter-of-fact statement, delivered without bravado or excessive emotion, sent an unexpected shiver through Katherine, not of fear, but of something like security. "He won't," she said with certainty. "He has his reputation to protect. Coming after a runaway fiancé would create scandal, and the Winthrops avoid scandal above all else." Adam nodded, accepting her assessment. "Good. Then we can focus on the future." He extinguished his cigarette and turned to face her fully. "If you're sure about proceeding, we can ride into Santa Fe on Saturday, see the preacher, and make it official." The sudden reality of what she was agreeing to made Katherine's heart beat faster, but she nodded. "Saturday, then." Adam smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "I'll try to be a good husband to you, Katherine. I can't promise I'll always get it right, but I'll try." "That's all anyone can ask," she replied softly. As she lay in bed that night, Katherine reflected on the strange path that had led her here. 4 months ago, she had been engaged to one of Boston's eligible bachelors, teaching at a prestigious girls' school and living what appeared to be a charmed life. Now she was preparing to marry a cattle rancher in New Mexico territory, a man she'd known for 2 days. Yet somehow, despite everything, she felt safer here in this frontier house than she had in Boston's refined drawing rooms. Adam Keller might be a near stranger, but he had shown her more genuine respect in 2 days than Harold had in their year-long courtship. Saturday dawned clear and warm, a perfect early autumn day in the New Mexico territory. Katherine stood before the small mirror in her bedroom, adjusting the collar of her best dress, a dove-gray silk with modest lace trim that had been packed away for the journey west. It wasn't a traditional wedding gown, but it was the finest thing she owned. Elena bustled in, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers tied with a ribbon. "For you," she said, presenting them with a smile. "A bride should have flowers on her wedding day." "They're beautiful," Katherine said, touched by the thoughtful gesture. "Thank you, Elena. Are you nervous?" Elena asked, helping to secure a loose strand of Katherine's hair. "Yes," she admitted, "but not in the way you might think. It's strange to be marrying a man I barely know." Elena patted her hand reassuringly. "Many marriages begin this way, especially out here. The knowing comes with time." She studied Katherine's face critically. "The bruise is fading. Soon it will be gone completely." The physical mark might fade, Katherine thought, but the memories would take longer to heal. Still, there was something symbolic about starting her new life, while the evidence of the old one was still visible, a reminder of what she had escaped. A knock at the door announced Adam's arrival. When Elena opened it, Katherine turned to see him standing there in clean clothes, his hair neatly combed, and a freshly trimmed beard emphasizing his strong jawline. He looked handsome and slightly uncomfortable in his Sunday best. "The wagon's ready whenever you are," he said, his eyes taking in her appearance with quiet appreciation. The journey to Santa Fe passed quickly, with Adam pointing out changes in the landscape since their last trip and answering Katherine's questions about the territory's history. She found his knowledge impressive. He might not have had a formal education, but he was well informed about the things that mattered in his world. Santa Fe was busy with Saturday commerce when they arrived, the plaza filled with traders, townspeople, and visitors. Adam guided the wagon to a modest church on a side street, where he had apparently made prior arrangements with the minister. The ceremony itself was brief and simple. Standing before Reverend Thomas Wilson, with Elena and Miguel as witnesses, Katherine and Adam exchanged traditional vows. When Adam slipped a plain gold band onto her finger, a ring he explained had belonged to his mother, Katherine felt a surprising surge of emotion. This was real. She was now Katherine Keller, wife of a New Mexico rancher, 1,000 miles from her old life. "You may kiss the bride," the Reverend announced. Adam hesitated for just a moment, then leaned forward and placed a gentle, chaste kiss on Katherine's lips. It lasted only seconds, but Katherine felt the warmth of it long after he pulled away. After signing the necessary documents, Adam surprised her by announcing he had a few errands to run in town before they returned to the ranch. "I thought we might have dinner at the hotel," he suggested as they walked back toward the plaza. "A small celebration." "That sounds lovely," Katherine replied, touched by the gesture. Their first stop was a dressmaker's shop, where Adam introduced Katherine to Mrs. Abigail Foster, a cheerful woman with pins stuck in her collar and measuring tape around her neck. "Your husband wrote that you'd be needing some proper riding clothes and everyday wear suitable for ranch life," Mrs. Foster explained, leading Katherine to a fitting area. Katherine glanced at Adam in surprise. "When did you arrange this?" "Sent a message with Tom Wilson yesterday," he admitted. "Thought you might appreciate having clothes better suited to your new circumstances." The thoughtfulness of the gesture left Katherine momentarily speechless. Harold had often bought her expensive gifts, but they had always been what he wanted to see her in, without consideration for her comfort or preferences. "Thank you," she said simply. While Katherine was fitted for several practical outfits and a proper riding skirt, Adam went to complete his other errands. He returned just as she was finishing up, carrying several packages which he stored in the wagon before escorting her to the Grand Hotel for their wedding dinner. The dining room was the finest establishment in Santa Fe, with white tablecloths and crystal glasses that reminded Katherine of Boston. Yet the atmosphere was distinctly Western miners and cattlemen in their best clothes, dining alongside territorial officials and their wives, the conversations a mixture of English and Spanish. "This is a special occasion," Adam said as they were seated at a corner table. "Thought you deserved better than trail dust and beans on your wedding day." Katherine smiled, appreciating the effort he was making. "It's perfect." Over a meal of roast beef and potatoes, they talked more freely than they had before, perhaps aided by the small glasses of wine Adam ordered. Katherine shared stories of her teaching days, and Adam spoke of his childhood on the ranch, including mishaps and adventures that made her laugh. With each passing hour, the strangeness of their situation seemed to fade a little more. "May I ask you something?" Katherine ventured as they shared a slice of apple pie for dessert. "Of course. Why did you really decide to advertise for a wife? Elena mentioned there aren't many suitable women in the territory, but surely there must be some." Adam considered the question, taking a sip of his coffee before answering. "Practical reasons, partly. Ranch needs a woman's touch, as I said before, but it's more than that." He hesitated. "After my father died, I realized how lonely this life can be. Cattle and land are fine things to work for, but not much company on long winter nights." His honesty moved her. "I can understand that kind of loneliness." "I thought you might," he said softly. "Your letter stood out from the others. You wrote about wanting peace and purpose, not just security or adventure like most of the women who responded. It seemed genuine." "It was," Katherine confirmed, "though I wasn't entirely forthcoming about my reasons for leaving Boston. We all have parts of our past we'd rather leave behind," Adam said without judgment. "What matters is who you choose to be going forward." As they rode back to the ranch in the gathering dusk, Katherine found herself studying her new husband's profile against the darkening sky. He was still largely a mystery to her, yet she felt a growing sense of comfort in his presence. Perhaps Elena was right, the knowing would come with time. When they arrived back at the ranch house, Adam helped her down from the wagon, then surprised her by gathering her into his arms. "Tradition says I should carry you over the threshold," he explained with a small smile. "If you don't mind." Before she could respond, he had lifted her effortlessly, cradling her against his chest as he carried her up the porch steps and through the front door. The gesture was unexpectedly romantic from a man who seemed so practical in all things. Inside, Katherine was surprised to find the main room transformed. Fresh wildflowers filled ceramic vases on the tables, new curtains hung at the windows, and a colorful hand-woven blanket was draped over the back of the sofa. "Elena's work," Adam explained, setting Katherine carefully on her feet. "She wanted the house to feel more like a home for you." "It's wonderful," Katherine said sincerely, touched by the housekeeper's thoughtfulness. The awkwardness that had been held at bay throughout the day suddenly descended as they stood together in the quiet house. They were husband and wife now, with all the expectations that entailed. Adam seemed to sense her tension. "I meant what I said before," he told her quietly. "I don't expect anything you're not ready to give. The small bedroom is made up for me. You can have the main room to yourself for as long as you need." The consideration behind the offer brought tears to Catherine's eyes. After Harold's possessive behavior, Adam's respect for her boundaries was a revelation. "Thank you," she whispered. Adam reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently touched her cheek where the bruise was fading to a yellowish hue. "No man should ever leave marks like this on a woman," he said, his voice low and serious. "I swear to you, Catherine, whatever else happens between us, you'll never have reason to fear me." In that moment, looking into his earnest blue eyes, Catherine believed him completely. On impulse, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Good night, husband," she said, trying the word for the first time. A smile touched his lips. "Good night, wife. Sleep well." The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that surprised Catherine with its comfort. She quickly adapted to the daily routines of ranch life, rising early to help Alina with breakfast before the men headed out to work, learning to manage the household accounts in the afternoons, and gradually taking on more responsibilities as she became familiar with the workings of the ranch. Adam was true to his word, giving her space and time to adjust to their new relationship. He slept in the small bedroom, treated her with unfailing courtesy, and never pressed for more intimacy than she offered. Their conversations over meals and during quiet evenings grew easier, their knowledge of each other expanding with each passing day. Catherine's riding skills improved rapidly under Adam's patient instruction. Soon, she was accompanying him on short trips around the property, her confidence growing as she mastered the basics of horsemanship. The new riding clothes Mrs. Foster had made proved their worth, allowing her freedom of movement that her Boston attire had never permitted. As October progressed, bringing cooler temperatures and changing colors to the landscape, Catherine found herself watching Adam with increasing interest. She noticed the way his hands moved as he worked, strong and capable whether he was mending tack or writing in the ledger books. She observed the respect he showed to Miguel and the other ranch hands, never demanding work he wasn't willing to do himself. And she saw the quiet gentleness he displayed with animals, the way he spoke softly to nervous horses, his patience with newborn calves. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of orange and pink, Catherine found the courage to ask him about something that had been on her mind. "Adam, are you happy with our arrangement?" He turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful. "Yes." "Are you having doubts?" "Not doubts exactly," she clarified. "I just wonder if you expected more from this marriage." Adam was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully as he always did. "I expected a partnership, Catherine, someone to share the work and the rewards of this life." "You've become that already." "But a marriage is usually more than a partnership," she pressed gently. "Usually," he agreed, his eyes returning to the sunset. "But I told you I'd give you time, and I meant it." Catherine studied his profile, noting the strength of his jawline and the small scar near his right temple that she'd learned came from being thrown from a horse when he was 15. "What if I don't need quite so much time?" she asked softly. Adam's gaze returned to her face, his expression alert but controlled. "What are you saying, Catherine?" She took a deep breath, summoning her courage. "I'm saying that I'd like to try being a proper wife to you, Adam, if that's what you want too." The careful restraint he'd maintained in her presence slipped just a little, revealing a flash of desire in his eyes before he mastered himself again. "Are you certain?" "There's no rush." "I'm certain," she replied firmly. "I've come to care for you, Adam, more than I expected to." He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "I've cared for you since I saw you step down from that stagecoach, bruised but unbowed. It's only grown stronger since." That night, Catherine moved her things into the main bedroom. When Adam joined her later, after completing his evening rounds of the property, his approach was as considerate as everything else about him had been. He was gentle, responsive to her cues, and attentive to her comfort. What began as nervous anticipation on Catherine's part gradually transformed into genuine pleasure, as she discovered the joy of physical intimacy without fear or obligation. Afterward, lying in the circle of Adam's arms, Catherine felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in longer than she could remember. This man, who had been a stranger to her mere weeks ago, now felt like the safe harbor she had been seeking without knowing it. "Are you all right?" Adam murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Better than all right," she assured him, resting her head against his chest where she could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. As autumn deepened toward winter, Catherine and Adam's relationship continued to strengthen. They worked together during the days, Catherine taking over the bookkeeping entirely and learning to assist with some of the lighter ranch work. Adam teaching her about cattle breeding, weather patterns, and the economics of ranching. At night, they discovered each other in more intimate ways, building a physical relationship that complemented their growing emotional connection. Catherine found herself falling in love with her husband, not the desperate, anxiety-inducing attachment she'd felt for Harold, but a steady, warming affection based on genuine respect and shared purpose. November brought the fall roundup, a busy time when cattle were gathered from the far reaches of the ranch, counted, and sorted. Adam was gone from dawn until dusk most days, working alongside Miguel and the other hands to complete the essential task before winter weather set in. Catherine threw herself into supporting the operation, rising before dawn to help Elena prepare substantial meals for the hungry workers, riding out to deliver food and coffee when they were too far from the house to return for meals, and keeping careful count of the cattle as they were brought in. One evening, as Adam sat at the kitchen table after a long day's work, Catherine massaging his sore shoulders, he looked up at her with a tired smile. "You've taken to ranch life better than I could have hoped," he observed. "Hard to believe you were a city teacher just a few months ago." "I'm still learning," she demurred, working on a particularly tight knot in his muscles. "Miguel had to correct my cattle count twice today." "Miguel's been counting Keller cattle for 30 years, Adam chuckled. "Don't take it personally." Catherine leaned down to press a kiss to the top of his head, inhaling the scent of sunshine and dust that always seemed to cling to him after a day's work. "I never imagined I'd find this kind of life satisfying, but I do. There's an honesty to it that I appreciate." "It's not always this busy," Adam warned. "Winter can drag on, especially when snow keeps us close to the house for weeks at a time." "I'll look forward to the quiet," Catherine replied truthfully. "More time with my husband sounds appealing." Adam reached up to capture her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent warmth spreading through her. "I'm a lucky man, Katherine Keller." The first snow came in early December, a light dusting that melted by midday but signaled the changing season. Adam increased the pace of winter preparations, ensuring adequate hay was stored for the cattle, making repairs to outbuildings, and stockpiling supplies that would be needed if the ranch was temporarily cut off from town by bad weather. Catherine prepared the house for winter as well, working with Elena to preserve the last of the garden's produce, airing out warm bedding, and arranging the main room to make the most of the fireplace's heat. The activity kept her too busy to dwell on the approaching Christmas season, the first she would spend away from her family and familiar traditions. One afternoon, as she was organizing the pantry, a wave of unexpected nausea washed over her. She gripped the shelf for support, waiting for the sensation to pass. It had happened several times in the past week, always in the early afternoon, but she had attributed it to tiredness from the busy roundup season. "Katherine, are you all right?" Alina's voice came from behind her. "Just a little dizzy," Katherine replied, straightening slowly. Alina studied her face with knowing eyes. "When was your last monthly course?" The direct question startled Katherine, but as she thought about it, realization dawned. With all the activity of establishing her new life, she hadn't noticed that her cycle had failed to appear for. She counted quickly. Nearly 8 weeks. "Oh," she breathed, one hand moving instinctively to her stomach. Alina smiled broadly. "I thought as much. You have the look about you." "But I can't be certain yet," Katherine cautioned, though her heart was already racing with the possibility. "A woman knows," Alina said confidently. "You should tell Señor Adam." The thought of telling her husband filled Katherine with nervous excitement. They hadn't discussed children specifically, though Adam had mentioned family when speaking of his expectations for their marriage. Would he be pleased? They had only been married a few months. Was it too soon? That evening after dinner, when they were alone in their bedroom, Katherine gathered her courage. "Adam, there's something I need to tell you," she began, sitting beside him on the edge of the bed. He looked up from removing his boots, his expression immediately concerned. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," she assured him quickly. "At least I think so. I'm not entirely certain yet, but—" She took a deep breath. "I believe I might be with child." Adam went very still, his eyes searching her face. "A baby, our baby." Katherine nodded, suddenly anxious about his reaction. "It's early days yet, and I can't be absolutely sure, but Alina thinks—" She didn't get to finish her sentence because Adam pulled her into his arms, holding her with a gentleness that belied his obvious emotion. "A family," he murmured against her hair. "Katherine, this is wonderful news." The genuine joy in his voice dispelled her anxiety. "You're happy then?" Adam pulled back slightly to look at her, his eyes bright with emotion. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Are you feeling well? Do you need anything? Should I ride for the doctor tomorrow?" Katherine laughed at his barrage of questions, touching his face gently. "I'm fine, just a little queasy in the afternoons. There's no need for a doctor, yet it will be months before the baby comes." "Still," Adam insisted, his protective instincts clearly activated, "we should make sure you're well looked after. No more heavy lifting or long rides until after the baby comes." "I'm pregnant, not invalid," Katherine reminded him with a smile. "Women have been having babies on the frontier since the beginning. I'll be careful, but I can still do my part around the ranch." Adam nodded reluctantly, knowing she was right but clearly already worried about her well-being. "Just promise you'll tell me if you need help or if anything doesn't feel right." "I promise," she agreed, touched by his concern. As they prepared for bed, Katherine found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed in just a few months. From a frightened woman fleeing an abusive relationship to a rancher's wife, expecting their first child, it was a transformation she could never have imagined back in Boston. That night, as Adam slept beside her, his hand protectively spread across her still flat stomach, Katherine sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the strange and winding path that had led her to this place of safety and love. The weeks leading up to Christmas passed quickly, filled with preparations for both the holiday and the coming baby. Katherine's nausea gradually subsided, replaced by a steady energy that allowed her to fully participate in the seasonal activities. Adam insisted on riding into Santa Fe to purchase special supplies for Christmas, returning with not only practical items but also small luxuries: real coffee, sugar candies, and a beautiful wool shawl for Katherine that he presented with shy pride. "For when you're sitting up with the baby," he explained as she admired the soft blue fabric. "I want you to be warm." His thoughtfulness continued to surprise and touch her. though not demonstrative by nature. Adam found small ways to show his care, making sure the house was warm before she rose in the mornings, bringing her wildflowers he found during his rides across the property, reading aloud from one of his few books in the evenings, as she sewed baby clothes from fabric Alina had provided. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold, with a fresh blanket of snow covering the ranch. After a special breakfast, they exchanged simple gifts. Katherine had knitted Adam a new scarf, while he presented her with a small wooden cradle he had been secretly making in the barn during the evenings. "Adam, it's beautiful," she exclaimed, running her hands over the smooth wood. "My father made one for me when I was born," he explained. "It didn't survive the years, but I remembered the design." The day was further brightened by a visit from the Perez family, including their grown children and grandchildren who lived in a neighboring community. The house filled with laughter, music from Miguel's guitar, and the delicious sense of traditional holiday foods that Alina had prepared. As Katherine watched Adam interact with the Perez grandchildren, awkward but gentle, letting the smallest ones climb on his knee and listening seriously to their childish stories, she felt a surge of confidence in his future role as a father. This man, who had advertised for a wife out of practical necessity, had revealed himself to be capable of deep affection and steady devotion. Winter settled in properly after Christmas, with heavy snows limiting travel and focusing life on the immediate needs of the ranch. The cattle required constant attention to ensure they had access to feed and water, keeping Adam and the ranch hands busy despite the harsh conditions. Katherine found herself appreciating the cozy evenings by the fire all the more for knowing how hard Adam worked in the bitter cold each day. As January turned to February, Katherine's condition became more visible, her slender figure changing to accommodate their growing child. Adam's protectiveness increased proportionally, much to Katherine's amused frustration. "I'm perfectly capable of walking to the chicken coop without an escort," she informed him one morning after he insisted on accompanying her on the simple chore. "The path is icy," he pointed out reasonably. "If you fell—" Katherine softened at the genuine concern in his eyes. "I'm being careful, I promise. But this baby and I still have months to go. You can't shadow my every move until then." Adam sighed, acknowledging the truth of her words. "I know. It's just, I never expected to care this much, Katherine, about you, about our child. Sometimes it feels overwhelming." The admission, so honest and vulnerable from a man who rarely spoke of his emotions, moved her deeply. She stepped closer, taking his gloved hands in hers. "I feel the same way," she told him softly. "It's frightening sometimes how much I've come to love this life with you. After Harold, I wasn't sure I could ever trust anyone again, but you've shown me what a true partnership can be." Adam pulled her gently into his arms, mindful of her growing belly between them. "I'll try to be less overbearing," he promised, "but you can't ask me not to worry about you both." "Fair enough," she conceded with a smile. As February gave way to March, the first signs of spring began to appear: patches of bare ground where the snow had melted, longer days, and the distinctive calls of returning birds. With the changing season came new energy to the ranch, as preparations began for spring calving and the planting of the kitchen garden. Katherine's pregnancy progressed normally, her body adapting to the changes with relative ease. Dr. Jenkins, who rode out from Santa Fe to check on her at Adam's insistence, pronounced her to be in excellent health and estimated the baby would arrive in early July. "First babies often come late," the elderly doctor advised as he packed up his bag after examining Katherine. "Don't be surprised if you're still waiting come mid-July." Adam took the doctor's every word as gospel, carefully noting down instructions about Catherine's diet, rest, and the preparations needed for the birth. His seriousness about the matter would have been comical if it wasn't so endearing. "We should start looking for a proper cradle board," Adam announced one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The spring air was still cool, but Catherine was wrapped warmly in her shawl, enjoying the fresh breeze after months of being mostly housebound. "A cradle board," she repeated, puzzled. "Like the native women use," Adam nodded. "Best way to keep a baby safe while working. The women around here all use them. You can strap the baby to your back or hang the board from a tree branch while you work. Miguel's daughter Maria might have one she's not using anymore." The practical consideration was so typical of Adam, always thinking ahead to how their lives would function once the baby arrived. Catherine smiled, placing her hand over his where it rested on the porch railing. "You're going to be a wonderful father," she told him softly. Adam looked momentarily startled by the compliment, then pleased. "I hope so. Never had much example to follow. My father did his best, but he was more comfortable with cattle than children." "You're not your father," Catherine reminded him. "You'll find your own way." April brought the first calves, keeping Adam and the ranch hands busy day and night. Catherine often woke to find Adam's side of the bed empty, only to discover he'd been called out to assist with a difficult birth, or to check on a new mother and her calf. When he returned, sometimes mud splattered and exhausted, she would help him clean up before he collapsed into bed for a few hours of rest before starting again. Despite the exhaustion evident on his face, Adam always seemed energized by the new life appearing on the ranch. "Had twins born last night," he reported one morning, accepting the cup of coffee Catherine handed him. "First time for that heifer, but she's handling both calves just fine. Unlike some expectant fathers I could name, who look like they haven't slept properly in weeks," Catherine teased gently, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Adam captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'll sleep when calving season is over." "Speaking of which, how are you feeling this morning?" "The same as yesterday," she assured him. "Still months to go before our little one makes an appearance." As May arrived, bringing warmer weather and green grass for the cattle, life on the ranch settled into a more manageable rhythm. The most intensive part of calving season was over, allowing Adam more regular hours at home. Catherine's pregnancy continued to progress well, though her expanding waistline made some tasks more challenging. One warm afternoon, as Catherine was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, a rider approached from the direction of Santa Fe. She shaded her eyes, trying to identify the visitor, but didn't recognize the well-dressed man on the expensive horse. "Hello there," the man called as he drew closer. "This is the Keller Ranch, isn't it?" "It is," Catherine confirmed, instinctively resting one hand on her rounded belly in a protective gesture. "My husband is out with the cattle at the moment. Can I help you?" The man dismounted, removing his hat to reveal sandy hair and patrician features that struck Catherine as vaguely familiar. "I'm looking for Katherine Graham. I was told in town she might be found here." Catherine's blood ran cold at the use of her maiden name. No one in Santa Fe should have been asking after Katherine Graham. She had been Katherine Keller for months now. "Who's asking?" she inquired, keeping her voice steady despite the sudden pounding of her heart. The man stepped closer, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her pregnant state. "My name is Charles Winthrop. I'm looking for my brother's fiancé." Harold's brother. Catherine felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Charles had accompanied them to several social events in Boston, though she'd never spoken with him at length. Now here he was, thousands of miles from Massachusetts, standing in her yard. "What do you want, Mr. Winthrop?" she asked directly, Abandoning any pretense, Charles Winthrop's expression hardened. "So it is you. Harold sent me to bring you back to Boston. Your disappearance has caused quite the scandal, as I'm sure you intended." Katherine straightened her spine, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm married now, as you can see." She gestured to her pregnant belly. "My life is here," Charles scoffed. "Married to some frontier rancher. Harold is willing to overlook your indiscretion. Given the circumstances of your departure, he feels partially responsible for your hysteria." The familiar diminishing of her legitimate fears as hysteria rekindled Katherine's anger. "Your brother broke my ribs and blackened my eye when I tried to break our engagement. There was nothing hysterical about my departure, it was survival." "Harold can be passionate," Charles acknowledged with a dismissive wave of his hand. "But he's a Winthrop. He can provide for you in ways this." He glanced disparagingly around the ranch yard. "Place never could. Think of your child's future." "My child's future is here with their father, my husband," Katherine replied firmly. "Please leave, Mr. Winthrop. You've had a wasted journey." Charles took another step toward her, his expression darkening. "I'm not leaving without you, Katherine. Harold has gone to considerable expense to locate you. I don't intend to return empty-handed." Before Katherine could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Adam rode into the yard, his expression changing from curiosity to concern as he took in the scene before him. He dismounted quickly, moving to Katherine's side. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of steel that Katherine had rarely heard. "This is Charles Winthrop," she explained, reaching for Adam's hand. "Harold's brother. He's come to take me back to Boston." Adam's fingers tightened around hers as he studied the man before them. "Is that so?" Charles looked Adam up and down with obvious disdain. "This is a private matter between Miss Graham and my family. I'd appreciate, Mrs. Keller," Adam corrected flatly. "And there's nothing private about a man coming to my ranch to harass my wife." The tension in the air was palpable as the two men assessed each other. Charles Winthrop, for all his fine clothes and Eastern sophistication, seemed to recognize the dangerous ground he was treading. "There's been a misunderstanding," Charles said, his tone becoming more conciliatory. "I merely came to deliver a message from my brother and offer Katherine Mrs. Keller transportation back to Boston if she wished it." Adam's expression made it clear he didn't believe a word. "Message delivered. She doesn't wish it. Now I'd suggest you get back on your horse and ride out while you still can." Charles hesitated, glancing at Katherine as if expecting her to contradict Adam. When she remained silent, her hand firmly in her husband's, his expression hardened. "Harold won't be pleased," he warned. "This isn't the end of the matter." "It is as far as we're concerned," Adam replied evenly. "My wife isn't going anywhere, and if your brother or anyone else from your family comes near her again, they'll regret it." The quiet certainty in Adam's voice carried more weight than any shouted threat could have. Charles Winthrop must have sensed the genuine danger because he stepped back, replacing his hat with careful dignity. "I see I've wasted my time," he said stiffly. "Good day to you both." They watched in silence as he mounted his horse and rode away, waiting until he was well out of sight before speaking. "Are you all right?" Adam asked immediately, turning to Katherine with concern evident in his eyes. She nodded, though her hands were trembling. "Yes, just shocked. I never thought they'd find me here." Adam led her to the porch where she could sit down. "How did they know to look in Santa Fe?" "I don't know," Katherine admitted, trying to think clearly despite her racing heart. "Perhaps they traced my ticket purchases somehow. I wasn't exactly hiding my trail. I never thought Harold would care enough to search for me." Adam's expression darkened. Men like that care about ownership, not the woman herself. You embarrassed him by leaving. The truth of his assessment chilled Katherine. Do you think Charles will come back? Or Harold? I don't know, Adam admitted, kneeling before her and taking both her hands in his. But I meant what I said. You're my wife now. No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go. The absolute conviction in his voice steadied her. This was the fundamental difference between Adam and Harold. Adam saw her as a person with her own will and choices, while Harold had viewed her as a possession. I'm where I want to be, she assured him, leaning forward to rest her forehead against his. This is my home. You are my family. Adam's arms encircled her, careful of her pregnant belly. No one will hurt you again, Katherine, not while I'm alive to prevent it. That night, Katherine slept fitfully despite Adam's protective presence beside her. Charles Winthrop's appearance had reopened wounds she'd thought were healing, bringing back memories of Harold's escalating control and violence during their engagement. In the morning, Adam announced he was riding into Santa Fe to speak with the sheriff about the situation. Need to make sure he knows we're not expecting any more Winthrop visitors, he explained as he saddled his horse. And I'll ask around town, find out if anyone else has been asking questions about you. Katherine wanted to protest, to insist she could handle her own problems, but the practical part of her knew Adam was right. In her condition, she was vulnerable if Harold decided to take more direct action. Be careful, she urged as Adam mounted up. The Winthrops have money and influence, even this far west. Adam's expression was grim but determined. Money doesn't count for much out here if folks don't respect you. I'll be back before sundown. After he rode out, Katherine tried to focus on her usual tasks, but anxiety kept her attention divided. Alina noticed her distraction and eventually coaxed the story from her. Men like this Harold, Alina said with a disgusted shake of her head, they believe women are property, not people. But Senor Adam will not let him near you, I am certain. It's not just me I'm worried about now, Katherine admitted, resting her hand on her swollen belly where the baby was kicking energetically. This child deserves a peaceful life, not one shadowed by fear. Alina patted her hand reassuringly. This child will have a good father who protects his family, and a mother with the courage to leave a bad situation and build a new life. That is already more than many children receive. Her words were comforting, reminding Katherine that she had already taken the hardest step by leaving Boston. Whatever happened now, she would face it with Adam beside her, not alone. Adam returned as promised before sunset, his expression more relaxed than when he'd left. Sheriff Donovan knows about the Winthrop situation now, he reported as they sat down to dinner. He'll keep an eye out for any Easterners asking too many questions. Did you learn anything in town? Katherine asked. Adam nodded. Charles Winthrop's been staying at the Grand Hotel for 3 days. Been asking all over town about a Boston woman named Katherine Graham. Eventually someone remembered the marriage license for Katherine Graham and Adam Keller being filed a few months back. And now, he checked out of the hotel this morning, told the clerk he was heading back east. Adam reached across the table to take her hand. Could be the truth, could be misdirection. Either way, we'll be watchful for a while. The potential threat of the Winthrops cast a shadow over the following weeks, though no further incidents occurred. Adam was more vigilant than usual, checking the property boundaries regularly and ensuring Katherine was never alone for long periods. Miguel and the other ranch hands were discreetly informed of the situation, creating an unofficial protective circle around the ranch house. Despite the underlying tension, life continued its forward momentum. June arrived with blazing heat that made Katherine's advanced pregnancy especially uncomfortable. The baby was active now, kicking and rolling in ways that sometimes took her breath away. "Strong one we've got there," Adam observed one evening as he felt the movements beneath his palm. "Takes after its mother." Katherine smiled at the compliment, covering his hand with her own. "Or its father, stubborn and determined." "Both terrible qualities in a child," Adam deadpanned, his eyes crinkling with amusement. "Terrible," Katherine agreed with a laugh. These quiet moments together had become precious to her, especially as her due date approached. Soon their lives would change again with the arrival of their child. As July began, bringing with it the most intense heat of the summer, Katherine's body began preparing for birth. Her back ached constantly, and she found it difficult to get comfortable in any position. Adam rearranged their bedroom to catch the coolest breezes and often massaged her sore muscles in the evenings, his strong hands gentle as they eased her discomfort. Dr. Jenkins visited again, confirming that everything appeared normal and the baby was in the correct position for birth. "Won't be long now," he predicted, patting Katherine's hand kindly. "First babies can be unpredictable, but I'd guess within the next 2 weeks." The doctor's prediction proved accurate. 3 days later, in the early hours of a hot July morning, Katherine woke to the distinctive sensation of her waters breaking. She nudged Adam awake, her voice calm despite the flutter of nervous excitement in her chest. "It's time," she told him simply. Adam's transition from sleep to alert preparedness was immediate. He helped her change into a clean nightgown, then went to wake Alina and send Miguel for the doctor. By the time he returned to their bedroom, Katherine's first real contraction had begun, the intensity of it surprising her despite all she'd been told to expect. "Breathe through it," Adam encouraged, his voice steady even as concern showed in his eyes. "That's it." The labor progressed steadily throughout the morning and into the afternoon. Dr. Jenkins arrived around midday, his presence reassuring as the contractions grew stronger and closer together. Alina bustled about preparing clean linens and hot water, while Adam remained steadfastly by Katherine's side, wiping her brow with cool cloths and supporting her through each wave of pain. "You're doing wonderfully," he murmured during a brief respite between contractions. "So strong, Katherine." His unwavering support gave her courage as the labor intensified. When the time finally came to push, Katherine drew on reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Adam's hand clasped tightly in hers as she worked to bring their child into the world. The cry, when it finally came, was strong and indignant, a healthy protest at being thrust from comfortable darkness into the bright, noisy world. "A boy," Dr. Jenkins announced, lifting the red-faced infant for them to see. "A fine, strong boy." Adam's face transformed with wonder as the doctor placed the swaddled newborn in Katherine's arms. She looked down at their son, red-faced, dark-haired, and perfect, and felt a rush of love so overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes. "Hello, little one," she whispered, touching his tiny hand with her finger. "We've been waiting for you." Adam sat carefully on the edge of the bed, his expression a mix of awe and tenderness as he studied their child's face. "He's perfect," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Katherine, he's absolutely perfect." The intimacy of the moment, the three of them together for the first time as a family, was something Katherine knew she would remember for the rest of her life. The journey that had brought her here, from fear and pain to love and new life, seemed to have led precisely to this perfect moment. "What shall we name him?" she asked softly, looking up at Adam. They had discussed names but had never settled on a final choice, wanting to wait until they met their child. Adam considered the small face before him thoughtfully. "Benjamin," he suggested. "After my father. Benjamin Thomas Keller." "Benjamin," Katherine repeated, testing the name. It suited the serious little face looking up at them. I like it. Ben for short. Ben, Adam agreed with a smile, gently touching the baby's dark hair. Welcome to the world, son. The following days passed in a blur of exhaustion and joy as they adjusted to life with a newborn. Ben proved to have healthy lungs and a hearty appetite, keeping Katherine busy with frequent feedings throughout the day and night. Adam rearranged his work schedule to be present as much as possible, often taking the baby in the early mornings so Katherine could sleep for a few uninterrupted hours. A week after Ben's birth, as Katherine was nursing him in the rocking chair by their bedroom window, Adam entered with an unusually serious expression. "What is it?" she asked immediately, recognizing the tension in his posture. "Sheriff Donovan just rode out," Adam explained, sitting on the edge of the bed facing her. "He had news I thought you should know." Katherine's arms tightened instinctively around Ben. "Harold," Adam nodded. "He's in Santa Fe, arrived yesterday on the eastbound stage. Sheriff said he's been asking about us, specifically about you and the baby." Cold fear washed through Katherine. "What does he want?" Sheriff didn't speak with him directly, but from what he gathered from the hotel staff, Harold's been telling people he's come to claim his child. Adam's jaw tightened with controlled anger. "Apparently he's suggesting the baby is his, conceived before you left Boston." "That's impossible," Katherine said immediately, then hesitated as she calculated the timing. "Well, not technically impossible given the dates, but it's not true." "Ben is your son, Adam." "I know that," Adam assured her, reaching out to touch her hand where it cradled their son. "I don't doubt it for a second, but Harold seems to think he can use the timing to cause trouble." Katherine felt sick at the thought of Harold Winthrop anywhere near her child. "What can we do?" Sheriff suggested a few options. Adam replied, his voice calm and measured in a way that helped steady her rising panic. "Most straightforward is for us to leave the territory for a while, go to California or up to Colorado until he gives up and goes home." "Leave the ranch?" Katherine asked, knowing what a sacrifice that would be for Adam. "What about the cattle, the fall roundup?" "Miguel can manage," Adam said without hesitation. "Ranch isn't worth risking you or Ben." His expression softened as he looked at their son. "Nothing is worth that risk." The absolute certainty in his voice brought tears to Katherine's eyes. "What are the other options?" "We could fight him legally," Adam said, though his tone suggested he didn't favor this approach. "File statements with the judge in Santa Fe, contest any claims he makes." But legal battles can drag on, and there's no guarantee how a judge might rule given Harold's money and connections. Katherine considered their options, gently stroking Ben's dark hair as he nursed. The thought of running, of leaving the home they'd built together, was painful. But the alternative, facing Harold directly, risking that a judge might somehow rule in his favor, was unthinkable. "When would we need to leave?" she asked finally. Adam's relief at her acceptance of his preferred option was visible. "Soon. Tomorrow or the next day at latest. We can take the wagon to Albuquerque, then catch the train west from there." The practicality of his plans suggested he'd been thinking about this possibility for some time. "You've been preparing for this," she realized. "Hoping it wouldn't be necessary," Adam acknowledged. "But yes, I've had a contingency plan since Charles Winthrop showed up. I won't let anyone threaten my family, Katherine." The certainty of his protection, so different from the fear she'd lived with during her time with Harold, filled Katherine with resolve. They would face this challenge as they had faced everything else since her arrival together. "Then we'll go," she decided firmly. "But not because we're afraid. Because we're protecting our son until the threat passes." Adam nodded, his expression grim but determined. "I'll start making preparations." Elena and Miguel will come with us as far as Albuquerque to help with the journey, then return to watch over the ranch. As Adam left to begin organizing their departure, Katherine looked down at Ben, now sleeping peacefully against her breast. "Your father is a good man," she whispered to the infant. "Nothing like the man I almost married. We're very lucky, you and I." The preparation for their hasty departure consumed the rest of the day. Adam and Miguel loaded the wagon with supplies while Elena helped Katherine pack clothes for themselves and the baby. By nightfall, everything was ready for an early morning departure. That night, as they lay in bed with Ben sleeping in his cradle beside them, Adam drew Katherine close, his arms providing comfort she desperately needed. "We'll come back when it's safe," he promised softly. "This is just temporary." Katherine nodded against his chest, trying to focus on the security of his embrace rather than the fear of what tomorrow might bring. "I know, it's just, I hate that he still has this power to disrupt our lives." "It's the last time," Adam assured her. "Once we're clear of the territory, I'll make arrangements to ensure he can't follow us again." The determined edge to his voice should have worried her, but Katherine found it reassuring instead. Adam would protect them, not through violence but through the same quiet competence he brought to everything in his life. They rose before dawn, moving quietly through the final preparations. Ben, bundled warmly against the morning chill, slept peacefully in Katherine's arms as Adam helped her into the wagon. Elena and Miguel joined them, their familiar presence comforting as the wagon rolled away from the ranch house just as the first rays of sunlight touched the eastern horizon. The journey to Albuquerque would take most of the day, following the main road south from Santa Fe. Adam drove the team steadily, stopping occasionally to rest the horses and allow Katherine to nurse Ben. Despite the tension of their situation, there was something almost peaceful about traveling together through the New Mexico landscape. The vast sky overhead and the distant mountains forming a backdrop to their small family's journey. They were perhaps 2 hours from Albuquerque when they heard the sound of approaching riders behind them. Adam glanced back, his expression tightening as he identified the 3 men on horseback gaining on the wagon. "Katherine," he said calmly, "take Ben and get down on the wagon bed. Miguel, your rifle is under the seat." With practiced efficiency, Miguel retrieved the weapon while Katherine huddled on the floor of the wagon, cradling Ben protectively. Elena joined her, positioning herself as an additional shield for the baby. The riders drew alongside the wagon, and Adam brought the team to a halt. Katherine couldn't see from her position, but she recognized Harold Winthrop's voice immediately. "There you are, Katherine. This is becoming quite tiresome." "Mr. Winthrop," Adam's voice was level but held a warning edge, "you're a long way from Boston." "I've come for what's mine," Harold replied coldly. "My fiancé and my child." "My wife and my son," Adam corrected, his tone unchanged but with steel beneath the words. "You have no claim here." Katherine could imagine the scene: Harold, impeccably dressed, despite the trail dust, looking down from his horse with the entitlement of a man accustomed to getting his way. The 2 men with him would be hired guns, probably former lawmen or soldiers willing to work for Winthrop money. "The timing makes it quite clear the child is mine," Harold insisted. "Katherine left Boston just over 9 months ago. Simple mathematics that even a rancher should understand." "The child is my son," Adam replied firmly. "Legally and in every other way that matters." "You need to turn around and head back east, Mr. Winthrop. There's nothing for you here." "I disagree." "Katherine," Katherine flinched at the sound of her name on Harold's lips, holding Ben tighter as he began to stir at the raised voices. "She's not coming out," Adam informed him. You're not going to see her or the baby. Not today, not ever. Now I suggest you move along before this becomes unpleasant." Harold's laugh was cold and dismissive. "You're outnumbered, Keller, and I have the law on my side. I've filed papers in Santa Fe claiming paternity of the child. A judge will be very interested in the dates involved. Any judge worth his salt will be more interested in the fact that you beat her badly enough to leave visible marks before she fled Boston," Adam countered, his voice hardening. "Or that you've pursued her across the country to continue your harassment." Catherine's heart pounded as she listened to the confrontation above her. Ben began to fuss, and she tried to soothe him quietly, praying he wouldn't begin crying in earnest. "This is your last warning," Adam continued. "Leave now or face the consequences. Are you threatening me?" Harold's tone was incredulous, as if he couldn't believe a mere rancher would dare to stand against him. "Stating facts," Adam replied calmly. "Miguel here is the finest shot in the territory. Those 2 hired guns you brought, they'd be dead before they cleared leather, and I'd handle you personally." The silence that followed was tense enough that Katherine could feel it even from her hidden position. She knew Adam was not bluffing. He would protect her and Ben with his life if necessary. The question was whether Harold would recognize the genuine danger he faced, or if his arrogance would push him to test Adam's resolve. Finally, Harold spoke again, his tone less certain than before. "This isn't over, Keller. I have resources you can't imagine. I'll pursue this through legal channels." "You do that," Adam replied evenly. "But understand something, Winthrop. If you come near my wife or son again through legal channels or otherwise, there won't be enough money in Boston to protect you from what follows. That's not a threat. It's a promise from a man who keeps his word." The conviction in Adam's voice apparently penetrated even Harold's sense of entitlement, because after another tense moment, Katherine heard the sounds of horses moving away. She remained still, holding her breath until Adam's voice came again. "They're gone. You can come up now." Alina helped Katherine back onto the seat, where Adam immediately checked that both she and Ben were unharmed. His face was grim but composed, showing none of the fear she knew he must have felt. "Will he really go?" Katherine asked as they resumed their journey, Ben now awake and studying the world with curious eyes from his secure bundle. "For now," Adam confirmed. "Men like that don't like direct confrontation. He'll try legal means first, maybe hiring someone else to do his dirty work if that fails." "What do we do?" Adam's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "We keep going. Get far enough away that his influence can't reach. I have a cousin in California I haven't seen in years. We'll head there, stay until we're certain the danger has passed." The certainty in his voice calmed her racing heart. This was the man she had married, steadfast, protective, and unwavering in his commitment to their family. They reached Albuquerque by late afternoon and secured passage on the westbound train leaving the following morning. After a night in a small hotel near the station, they said emotional goodbyes to Alina and Miguel, who would return to the ranch to manage things during their absence. "You take care of each other," Alina instructed, embracing Katherine tightly. "And of that precious Niño." "We will," Katherine promised, tears in her eyes as she realized how much these people had come to mean to her in less than a year. The train journey west was long but uneventful, the rhythmic motion soothing Ben into extended periods of sleep. Adam remained vigilant throughout, checking each new passenger who boarded at stops along the way. Katherine could see the tension in the set of his shoulders gradually ease as they crossed into Arizona territory, putting more distance between themselves and the threat Harold represented. Adam's cousin James Keller and his wife Sarah welcomed them warmly to their home outside Sacramento. James, like Adam, was a rancher, though his operation was considerably larger, focusing on both cattle and horses for the California market. "Stay as long as you need," James insisted after Adam explained their situation. "We've plenty of room, and Sarah's been wanting company since our oldest left for college back east." The Keller homestead was larger and more established than their ranch in New Mexico, reflecting the greater prosperity of California ranching. For the first time since Ben's birth, Katherine allowed herself to truly relax, secure in the knowledge that Harold couldn't easily find them here. As August turned to September, they settled into a comfortable routine on the California ranch. Adam helped his cousin with the daily operations, while Katherine assisted Sarah with household management and caring for Ben. The baby thrived in the new environment, growing stronger each day, and beginning to show the first hints of a personality that seemed to blend Katherine's thoughtfulness with Adam's quiet determination. "He looks just like Adam did as a baby," James remarked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Got that same serious expression." "Poor child," Adam deadpanned, though his eyes were warm with pride as he watched Katherine gently rock their son. "Have you heard anything from New Mexico?" Sarah asked, passing cups of coffee around the group. Adam nodded. "Got a telegram from Miguel yesterday. Sheriff Donovan reports that Winthrop filed his paternity claim but left the territory when the judge required him to present evidence beyond just the dates involved. Apparently, the judge wasn't impressed by a man claiming a child he'd never seen." "So it's over?" Katherine asked hopefully. "Maybe," Adam replied, his natural caution preventing a more definitive answer. "Miguel says Winthrop was making noise about returning to Boston to gather more evidence, but the sheriff thinks it's just talk to save face. Most likely he's realized the fight would be more difficult than he expected." Katherine studied her son's peaceful face as he slept in her arms. "I can't believe he would go to such lengths. It was never about me and certainly not about Ben. It was about his pride." "Men like that don't know how to lose gracefully," James observed, his expression sympathetic. "But they usually move on to easier targets eventually." The conversation turned to pleasanter topics, but Katherine continued to reflect on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. From the terrified woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Santa Fe with a black eye and broken spirit to the confident mother she was becoming, it was a transformation she could never have predicted. Later that night, as she and Adam prepared for bed in the guest room the Kellers had provided, Katherine voiced the thought that had been forming in her mind for days. "I think it's time we went home," she said quietly. Adam, who had been checking on Ben in his cradle, looked up in surprise. "Are you sure? We can stay longer if you're still concerned about Winthrop." Katherine shook her head. "I don't want to live in fear of him anymore. The ranch is our home, the home we're building for Ben. I don't want Harold to take that from us too." Adam crossed the room to take her hands in his. "If you're certain, we can make arrangements to return next week." "I'm certain," she confirmed. "Besides, you need to be there for the fall roundup. Miguel can manage, but it's your ranch." "Our ranch," Adam corrected gently. "And you're right, it's time to go home." The journey back to New Mexico was made with lighter hearts than their hasty departure had been. Ben proved to be an excellent traveler, charming fellow passengers on the train with his serious expressions and occasional smiles. By the time they reached Santa Fe in early October, Katherine felt a surge of genuine homecoming as the familiar landscape came into view. Miguel met them at the station with the wagon, his weathered face breaking into a broad smile at the sight of them. "Welcome home. Elena has been cooking since dawn when we got your telegram." The drive back to the ranch, felt different this time, not the journey of a mail-order bride to an unknown future, but the return of a family to the home they had built together. As the ranch buildings came into view, Katherine felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where they belonged. Lena rushed from the house as they pulled up, embracing Katherine and cooing over how much Ben had grown in the weeks they'd been gone. The homecoming celebration continued through dinner, with Alina serving all of Adam's favorite dishes and fussing over the baby until he fell asleep in her arms. That night, as Katherine and Adam settled into their own bed for the first time in months, Adam pulled her close, his arms strong and secure around her. "Thank you," he said softly against her hair. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a stranger, for building a life here with me, for Ben." His voice held a depth of emotion that still surprised her sometimes from this outwardly reserved man. "When you stepped off that stagecoach with that black eye, I had no idea how much you would change my life." Katherine turned in his arms to face him, tracing the familiar lines of his face with her fingertips. "That day when you said that life is over now, I didn't really believe you. I couldn't imagine a life without fear." She smiled softly in the darkness. "You proved me wrong." "We proved each other wrong," Adam corrected. "I thought I was getting a practical arrangement. Instead, I found the love of my life." The words, so simply stated yet so profound, filled Katherine with warmth. "I love you too, Adam Keller, more than I ever thought possible." His kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of all the years they would share together in this home they had built from unlikely beginnings. In the days that followed, life at the Keller Ranch returned to its normal rhythms. Adam threw himself into preparations for the fall roundup, while Katherine resumed management of the household, now with Ben as the center of her daily activities. The baby continued to thrive, growing stronger each day and beginning to interact more with the world around him. A month after their return, Sheriff Donovan rode out to the ranch with news. Harold Winthrop had formally withdrawn his paternity claim and returned to Boston. According to the sheriff's sources, he had become engaged to another Boston socialite, apparently deciding that pursuing Katherine was more trouble than it was worth. "Seems he's moved on," the sheriff concluded, accepting the coffee Katherine offered. "Probably for the best. That type doesn't do well out here anyway." After he left, Katherine found Adam in the barn, repairing tack for the upcoming roundup. "Sheriff Donovan just brought news," she told him. "Harold has withdrawn his claim and returned to Boston. He's engaged to someone else now." Adam looked up from his work, studying her face. "How do you feel about that?" Katherine considered the question carefully. "Relieved, mostly, and a little sad for whoever this new woman is. I hope she sees his true nature before it's too late." Adam set aside his work and drew her into his arms. "It's really over now." "It was over the day I arrived here," Katherine corrected, resting her head against his chest. "Everything since then has just been echoes of the past." As winter settled over the New Mexico territory, bringing short days and long, cold nights, the Keller family found new rhythms to their life together. Ben grew and changed daily, reaching new milestones that brought joy to everyone on the ranch. His first genuine laugh came when Adam made silly faces at him during an evening by the fire. His first attempts at crawling sent Alina into a flurry of child-proofing activity around the house. Christmas that year was a celebration unlike any Katherine had known before, not the formal, restrained affairs of her Boston upbringing, but a joyous gathering that combined Alina's Mexican traditions with frontier practicality. The house filled with the scents of pine boughs and Alina's cooking, while Ben, now nearly 6 months old, observed the festivities with wide-eyed wonder from various laps. Adam's gift to Catherine was a delicate gold locket containing a tiny photograph of the three of them that he had somehow arranged to have taken during their last trip into Santa Fe. Catherine's gift to him was news that their family would be expanding again. Another baby was expected in the summer. His joy at the announcement was everything she could have hoped for, a mixture of surprise, delight, and tender concern that confirmed once again how fortunate she had been to find this man. "Are you happy, Catherine?" he asked later that night as they lay together in the darkness, Ben sleeping peacefully in his cradle nearby. The question seemed to encompass so much their life together, the family they were building, the challenges they had overcome. Catherine considered all that had happened since she had stepped off that stagecoach with a black eye and a desperate plan. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied truthfully, nestling closer to him. "This life we've built together, it's everything I didn't know I needed." Adam's arms tightened around her, secure and loving. "When you arrived that day, I promised you that your old life was over. I had no idea what we would build in its place." "Something beautiful," Catherine murmured, thinking of their son sleeping nearby and the new life growing within her. "Something worth every step of the journey." Outside, snow began to fall gently, covering the ranch in a blanket of white that would nurture the land through winter until spring brought new growth. Inside, wrapped in the warmth of their home and each other's arms, Katherine and Adam Keller continued writing the story they had begun on that dusty afternoon, when a mail-order bride with a black eye had found an unexpected champion in a quiet rancher with a steadfast heart.